Hey everyone, Chef Ryan here from the Growing Chefs Ontario Classroom Kitchen with our holiday edition of our monthly kids cooking class featuring sweets and treats. Whenever I think of holiday sweets, I automatically think of my Aunt Sherry's mini cherry cheesecakes. So I've taken her idea and I put my own spin on it, and I'm going to show you how to make, are you ready for it? Mini chocolate candy cane cheesecakes. I know, sounds good, right? Here's everything you'll need for this recipe. To start this recipe, I'm going to melt 1 tablespoon of butter. While your butter is melting, you can preheat your oven to 325 degrees. I have some cookie crumbs here, some chocolate cookie crumbs, that I'm going to mix with my melted butter. This is going to be the base of our cheesecakes. We don't want to brown our butter, we just want to melt it. My butter is melted, so I'm going to pour it into my chocolate cookie crumbs now, and I'm going to mix it very, very well. I'm looking for sort of wet sand consistency with this base. Make sure you don't get rid of your butter pot, just set it off to the side. We're going to use that pot again later. You want your butter to be evenly distributed through all of those crumbs. My butter is completely mixed in with all of those crumbs, so now I'm going to take a teaspoon and pack it in and put it in the bottom of my prepared muffin tin with liners. So I want a solid teaspoon of cookie crumb base in the bottom of each tin. If you have any leftover cookie crumbs at the end, that's okay, just go back over and add a little bit more to each one of the tins. I'm now going to take the back of my measuring spoon and gently press down those crumbs to compact them in the bottom of each one of my tins so that it makes a nice crust. I'll pop this into my oven and bake it for 5 minutes. My crusts are finished baking, so I'm just going to set them off to the side now and let them cool down a little bit while I work on the filling for our cheesecakes. So to make the filling for the cheesecake, I have some room temperature cream cheese here. You'll want to make sure that is room temperature or it will be very tricky to work with. I'm going to start to beat the cream cheese and then I'm going to add the sugar into it. I'll add my sugar and continue to beat it. Next, I have some Greek yogurt that I'm going to add into the mix. Make sure you're scraping the edges of your bowl down as well as you're working so that you don't have lumps of cream cheese in your cakes. I can add my cocoa powder now because it is chocolate cheesecake after all. Next, I have 2 types of extract. I have a peppermint extract and a vanilla extract. And the last ingredient for my filling is my egg. I'll give it one more scrape and a final mix, and then we'll start putting it over top of our crust. So you don't want to over mix your cheesecake because that will increase your chances of it splitting in the oven. So I have the base of my cheesecake or the crust, and I'm going to take a tablespoon now and measure out a heaping tablespoon of my cheese batter over top of the crust. If there's some left over at the end, that's okay. We'll just go back over and add a little bit more to each one again. Try to spread the batter out a little bit as you're going as well. My batter is evenly distributed over all of my crust, so now I'm going to clean up any spills that I might have made around the edges. Another reason I like this cheesecake recipe so much is that you don't have to worry about water bath like you would a regular cheesecake. I've lowered the temperature of my oven to 300 degrees and I'm going to bake these for about 10 to 12 minutes now. After 12 minutes in the oven, my cheesecake were finished. I then shut off the oven, opened the oven door, and let them hang out in that warm oven for another 10 minutes. We want to be nice and gentle when we're cooking cheesecakes so that the tops don't split or crack open on us. So I'm going to set this aside and let it chill completely before doing my next step, which is making the ganache. Ganache is just a fancy way of saying melted together chocolate and cream. So remember that butter pot we had earlier? I'm going to pour my 35% cream into that pot because if you're like me, you love cooking, but you don't love washing dishes. So if I can save a dish, I do it. So I've got my 35% cream in that pot. I'm just gonna warm it until it's almost at a boil. So I'm looking at the surface of the cream and I wanna see steam start to rise off of it. I have a little glass bowl here with my chocolate chips that I'm going to pour over the hot cream over top of my chocolate chips and then melt it together. This is going to be sort of a topping for our mini cheesecakes. So my cream is steaming now. I'm going to gently pour it over top of my chocolate chips and let it hang out for about a minute, and then I'll whisk everything together. So we can see our chocolate ganache is nice and smooth. There are no lumps of chocolate in there. I'm gonna let it cool down just a little bit more before topping my cheesecakes. My ganache has cooled down just a little bit. I don't want to melt the tops of my cheesecake, so now I'm going to evenly divide it on top of my cheesecakes. As I'm doing so, I'm sort of spreading it to the edges of the cheesecake liner so that when you bite into your mini cheesecake, you can see all the different layers. Now before my ganache completely sets, I'm going to take some broken up candy cane and sprinkle them over top. This is going to give us a little bit of crunch and texture to our cheesecake, but it's also going to reinforce that peppermint flavor, and it's going to make it look a little bit festive as well. Now that all of my cheesecakes are topped, I'm going to put them in the fridge and let them cool down for at least 30 minutes before we can enjoy them. Once your cheesecakes are completely chilled, you can carefully pop them out of the muffin tins. Peel back that muffin liner and then you're ready to enjoy. So you can see the 3 different layers. We have that crumbly cookie base and then that creamy cheesecake center and that fudgy chocolate on top. I'm Chef Ryan from Growing Chefs Ontario, and I hope you like my chocolate candy cane cheesecake recipe.